Happy Monday. It could happen. It's happening. It's Monday, October 21st, 8:07 in the morning here in western Iowa. How you doing? Looks like a cool off coming for the plains finally, Great Lakes, eastern part of the US over the next few days. Our upper level low in the Four Corners has kicked into the plains and our severe weather is moving there. We'll talk about that. We'll even take a sneak peek for you as our weather pattern looks like it'll be changing as we get into November. So that's good news, or should be for most anyway. Here we go with the watches and warnings across the area as the upper level low gets kicked into the plains. Cooler air falling into Colorado now with some freeze watches, parts of the state. Winter weather advisories for lingering snow, the mountains west of Denver, and then up into Wyoming. We have a little bit of wind, high wind watch there. So watch out for high wind as we check out our weather spotlight. That low moving into the plains. And so as we're centered around Hastings, Nebraska here, excuse me, we do see our main severe weather threat should be this afternoon and evening. Quarter-size hail perhaps. Wind gusts around 60 perhaps. Isolated tornadoes possible as well. And additional updates will be likely throughout the day. Well, that's a good idea. And then also for northern Kansas, too. Got to watch out here for a chance for isolated tornadoes as we take a look at our severe weather threat in the plains, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, into Texas. And that tornado threat is here. It's only a 2% chance. But again, south central Nebraska into central Kansas, that 2% risk of tornadoes. So if you watch Storm Runner Media, which you should if you don't, they'll be in this area chasing storms today, and we'll see if there's any tornadoes to be had. If there are, hopefully out in some corn fields that have already been harvested. That would be ideal. All right, surface map for today. We see the associated cold front with our upper level low that's being kicked into the plains. Ahead of that is our thunderstorm chance. And behind that is our chance for snow or a mix, depending on elevation, Colorado, Wyoming. Our next storm in the Pacific Northwest with snow or rain, depending on elevation. Florida with a little bit of moisture from Tropical Storm Oscar, which is hitting Cuba today. But a few showers there. As we get into our anomalous temperatures for today, still much above average for much of the northern plains, into the upper Midwest, into the Great Lakes, into the East Coast, into the central plains. I mean, it's just warm and much above average for, say, Minnesota, especially North Dakota. Translates to these kinds of highs today. I mean, 80 for Minneapolis. Yeah, 83 Des Moines. Crazy. As you get down to, Kansas City in the 80s. It's 70s when you get to St. Louis, so that's nice. So cooling off as you head into the Ohio Valley for the east. Even in the northeast, some 60s thrown in there. Very pleasant, mid-Atlantic, 70s for the most part. Same for the northeast. But back to the 80s in Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, this is October 21st, so this is warm. Cool, though, for Colorado and into the northwest. And for the desert southwest, not bad. Low 80s. Low temperatures tomorrow morning. There's your freezing temperatures for Colorado and up into the northern Rockies. A lot of 40s, lower elevations for the northwest. To start the day, near 60 Sacramento and into the 60s for the southwest and also Texas. 50s for the plains for the most part, which is very warm for this time of year. And we see a lot of 50s, even 40s as you get further east. Surface for tomorrow, we see our cold front getting loaded there in the northern plains. So that'll be our cool off coming as we get into the day Wednesday. Some storms still possible, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, as that shifts a little further east. Some tropical moisture for Florida. Cooler rain along the Canadian border for the Great Lakes and northern plains. And then some rain and snow for the northwest. Highs tomorrow should actually be cooler than this, I think, for the for the upper Midwest. I think this is a little underdone on the GFS, but still warm. Oklahoma into Texas, into the Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley, into the east. So it's still warm. and slightly below average for the Northwest. High temperatures, again, I think a little cooler than this Iowa, but still showing 80s for like 81 for Des Moines, 82 for Omaha. I think we'll be a little cooler than this tomorrow. At least our official forecast says so. And we get 80s into Kansas, Missouri, 90s. What? Some low 90s for Oklahoma, Wichita Falls, Texas. Just kind of crazy. But cool in the Northwest. Next 2 days for rain. Again, back to Nebraska. So around Hastings, up to an inch of rain. Perhaps with some of those storms, lesser amounts as you head further south into Kansas. But it's all needed here, so we'll take whatever we get. Northwest seeing some rain as well. Could add up to near an inch for portions of Idaho into northwestern Montana and even northwestern Washington. Surface on Wednesday, cooling off, upper Midwest, into the plains, into the Great Lakes. And this cooler air will be spreading to the east as we get further into the week. So looking forward to that. Back towards the Northwest, a little bit of rain and snow. And these anomalous temperatures on Wednesday. So still above average for Iowa, but instead of 20 degrees above average, single digits above average. So cooling off, but still warm. For example, where I live in western Iowa, we should be in the upper 50s this time of year. So, temperatures, will be in the 60s. So it'll be pleasant enough, but still above average. Now further back to the west and the plains is starting to warm up again, and the southern plains warming up. But this cool air will be heading east. Highs on Wednesday, 60s for northern Iowa, western Iowa, 50s into Minnesota and Wisconsin, even 40s for northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota into Michigan. So cooler air spilling in, but still 90s for Oklahoma into Texas. Still nice mid-Atlantic, just hanging in there. Mid to upper 70s for you guys. Next few days, pretty nice. And that cooler air, not quite yet for the East Coast, 60s and 70s here, but it's coming. And the Northwest cooling off. All right, let's take a look at the GFS and see what kind of trouble we can get in here. Here's our current light snow in Colorado. Some rain already in the plains, Texas Panhandle into Kansas, and even into Nebraska. By this afternoon, we see those storms busting out south central Nebraska into north central Kansas. This is our severe weather threat. Maybe some supercells in here as well. Pacific Northwest seeing mostly rain, a little bit of snow in higher elevations. Say as we get into, this is late tonight, so we see a little bit of snow up here in Idaho, Montana, northern Cascades for Washington. Our rain showers on the very light side for Kansas, Nebraska, parts of Iowa. We're hoping for some rain overnight Monday night. I hope it happens. It looks pretty slight on here. And then as we go through the day on Tuesday, we see our cool air coming in behind the low. And so we're starting to cool off here along the Canadian border. This is eventually going to head southward and cool us off in the upper Midwest and also into the plains. And as that front continues eastward, this is Wednesday morning, early morning, we see some showers along this front developing into Michigan and kind of underdone from the last few days. So not as much rain moving into New York State with that front as we get into Wednesday. But the cool off is here. Not as dramatic, I think, as some of the other models have. I think it has us a little bit cooler, some of this cooler air heading a little further south. But I do believe that the Northeast at least is going to see a decent cool off as we get into Thursday. And we're starting to see a little bit of a system forming out here Thursday morning. A little bit more snow for Yellowstone, also into parts of Montana and Idaho. And as that little bit of a low tracks across the northern plains, perhaps some rain up here in North Dakota, and a few showers busted out in Iowa as well. This is Thursday night, moving into Friday now, a few more storms. Northern Missouri moving into Illinois, Wisconsin, and eventually into the Great Lakes. Now we see behind this low a bigger cool off heading for the northern plains and hopefully into the upper Midwest again. So this is Friday morning. And as we get through the day Friday, we see this cool air sinking southward, but moving mostly eastward. So again, the Great Lakes with the biggest cool off with this, but some of the plains should feel the effects of some of that as we get into Saturday now. This is Saturday. Nice cool off for the Northeast. In fact, if we see any precipitation coming off the lakes here, we could see some snow. Although it's showing rain here, but our 540 line is through Pennsylvania, so maybe a little bit of snow mixed in here. And then our next system for the Pacific Northwest this weekend, as we get further into the weekend, that cold air into the Northeast, some breezes, so it'll feel even colder. A little bit of light snow. New York, New Hampshire, Vermont. Very nice. If you're heading out to look at the leaves, it's probably almost past peak for some areas here. But there'll be some snow coming down. It is that time of year as we get later into Sunday. A few showers down in Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, not really much to email home about, but we do have some showers moving into the Pacific Northwest as we wrap up the weekend forecast here. A few showers and storms, Oklahoma, and some rain for Oregon and Washington, snow in the higher elevations. Now, let's show you as we zoom into, here's Tuesday the 29th. So we see a system here in the Northwest with some snow for Montana, Idaho, Nevada, Northern California. And as we get into, this is moving into Wednesday now, the 30th. See a nice little low moving into the Intermountain West, or the Great Basin, with some snow all the way through Nevada, back into California, Oregon, heavier snow for Wyoming and Montana, into Idaho and Utah. And so as we get closer to our Halloween forecast, this low is kind of less organized than it was a few days ago. This was really showing a sharp low moving into the Dakotas with snow behind it. But we're still seeing some snow here behind it. Halloween morning into parts of Montana, into North Dakota, back towards Utah. And as we get into Halloween day, some showers and some storms perhaps. Nebraska into South Dakota, Minnesota with some snow behind, into parts of Colorado and Wyoming. This gets us to almost midnight here on Halloween. And as we head into the first day of November, we see a more active pattern for the upper Midwest and cooler air spilling in behind this low, which should change our fortunes as we head into November. In fact, I went with the 8 to 14 day outlook. So we're looking here from the 28th of this month until November 3rd. And we're starting to see that pattern change as we see the cooler air for the west, still staying warm for the east, but I think that'll change over time as we get more into November. And our precipitation chances, this is really the good news for a lot of people, especially here in the Midwest. We need the rain. So the western 2/3 of the country with at least the chance of above average precipitation, U2 Florida, dry for much of the east. All right, to round out our anomalous temperatures for the week, picking up where we left off, this is Thursday. So warming back up in the plains into the upper Midwest, but you see that cooler air in the northern plains coming further south. And so as we get into Friday, quite a cool off for the plains, upper Midwest, Great Lakes. Now again, we're still slightly above average, but right now we're much above average. So it'll be a noticeable cool off all the way down to Lubbock, Texas, even though most areas still staying above average. On the other side of the front, there you go, 15 degrees above average, 20 degrees above average for Oklahoma. So, it's going to be a noticeable drop off Friday and into Saturday, especially for the Northeast this weekend. We're going to get temperatures below average, breezy, and again for a chance for that, some scattered snow showers for parts of New England. And so that coolest air will be up there in New England with maybe a little bit of light snow for some, even as we start to warm back up in the northern plains to round out Sunday. All right, so that's our grand trip around the forecast through the weekend and beyond. Have a great Monday. It's going to happen. It is. And we'll see you tomorrow right here on the Weather Mic.